In the Meditations, René Descartes is going to give a philosophy that is drastically different than the philosophers before him. René Descartes was a faithful Catholic, and he was also a mathematician and a scientist, and he wants to establish a firm basis for those things, a firm basis for science and for continued learning. The philosophy of the time, the philosophy of Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas, was coming under some scrutiny. And Descartes, being a faithful Catholic and a scientist, wanted to rectify the situation. He wanted to counter the attacks because these attacks were attacks based on skepticism. They were attacks saying that we can't really know things. And so Descartes wants to find and wants to establish a firm basis for knowing things. He is going to attempt to give a philosophy that makes a clean break from the philosophers of the past. In particular, philosophers such as Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas. And he does this by introducing hyperbolic doubt. Hyperbolic doubt is this extreme skepticism. It is extreme philosophical skepticism. Philosophical skepticism is not your ordinary skepticism. It is normal to be skeptical about things that you should be skeptical about. If somebody calls you on the phone and says that you won a new car or that you won $1 million, it's good that you're skeptical about something like that. Philosophical skepticism is not that. Philosophical skepticism, the hyperbolic doubt that René Descartes introduces, is about normal everyday things. It is about things that are right in front of your face. So philosophical skepticism concerns common sense, everyday things that you think you know. Philosophical skepticism would lead you to question that the computer is in front of your face, that your mother is actually a real person. That's philosophical skepticism. It leads to doubt about the normal everyday things that you take for granted. René Descartes begins by saying that he is going to withhold his assent to anything where he can find any reason to doubt. René Descartes is offering such an extreme skepticism because he is looking to topple the whole building. He is looking to bring down the entire edifice of philosophy and start anew. And so only this extreme type of skepticism can accomplish that job. He even says that he wants to take down all his former opinions. So he is not giving any credit to any type of knowledge that he gained previously. He is even calling all that knowledge opinion. Descartes begins this journey into hyperbolic doubt by using the criteria just mentioned. If he can find anything, any type of doubt in a previous belief, then he is going to discard it. He begins with sense experience, and he notices that there are some optical illusions concerning sense experience. When you're driving and it's sunny outside, you may see in the distance a pond of water, but when you get closer, you realize it's not water. That is an optical illusion. That is not the type of evidence that Descartes is going to use in order to doubt his sense experience. After concluding that these optical illusions are not enough to doubt sense experience, Descartes thinks about when he is sleeping and when he has dreams. He notices that when he is dreaming, he actually thinks he's awake. And sometimes when he's dreaming, he is completely fooled as to things of sense experience. Descartes mentions that in one of his dreams, he was next to the fire and he was dressed, but then when he woke up, he was lying undressed in bed. We've all had dreams where we thought they were real. We've all had dreams where we've woken up and we kind of have to snap out of it a little bit. And what was going on in the dream? What do you see in the dream? You see other people, you see vehicles, you see food, you see other objects. You hear people talk, you hear the wind blowing. Also in dreams, it seems as if you can touch things. It seems as if you have the sense of touch. You can also be smelling something. You can also be tasting something. So in dreams, all the five senses seem to be active and participating. Descartes, based on this, is going to ask a very problematic question. What is the difference between you being awake right now and you dreaming? What is the line of demarcation? How would you prove that you are awake right now and not sleeping? This is more difficult than how it seems at first. How would you prove that you are awake and not dreaming? What evidence would you use? Can you use a video camera? Can you use speech? Can you say, listen, I'm really awake right now? Can you pinch yourself and say, boy, okay, I know I'm awake because I pinched myself and that gave me pain? Can't you feel pain in your sleep? Yes, you can feel pain in your sleep. Pain is not a good indicator that you're awake. How about talking to your family members? Is that a good indication that you're awake? What about watching a movie? Can you convince yourself that you're awake by going to watch a movie or going in your car and driving somewhere? That is not evidence either, because you can do those things in your dreams. The bottom line is you cannot prove by some philosophical argument or some mathematical argument that you are awake right now and are not dreaming. So Descartes, with this dream experiment, has shown that sense experience can be doubted. And remember what was said earlier, if he can find any reason to doubt something, he is going to doubt it and he is going to discard it. So at this point, the knowledge from sense experience has to be discarded. The knowledge from sense experience, whether it was gained by the ancient philosophers, by ancient scientists, it doesn't matter. Whoever gathered this knowledge, it must be discarded if it was gained by sense experience. All the objects of sense experience must be doubted. The human body is an object of sense experience. We have hands, we have eyes, we have legs. How do we know these things? Well, we look at them. You know you have legs when you touch them. You know that you have hands by looking at your hands and by touching them. These objects of sense experience can no longer be known with certainty. But Descartes notices something as he is thinking about his dreams. He notices that when he is sleeping, when he is dreaming, that these objects of sense experience, they do have a dimension that seems to have some certainty. If you are looking at a car, or you're looking at another human being, or you're looking at food, it does seem to have extension. It does seem to have some sort of shape. It does seem to have some sort of quantity. These ideas seem to be known even in your dreams. Descartes even says, whether I'm awake or I'm asleep, 2 plus 3 equals 5. Descartes concludes that the objects of mathematics and the sciences that are mathematical have a sense of certainty. But Descartes wants to build a firm foundation for the sciences, for philosophy, and for his religion. And so he is going to apply the hyperbolic doubt again. He is going to apply the philosophical skepticism. Even though Descartes believes in God and he believes God is good, for the sake of the hyperbolic doubt and for the sake of reaching certainty, he is going to suppose that there is an evil genius intent on deceiving him. He is going to suppose that this evil genius is laying traps for his credulity. This evil genius is not only capable of deceiving Descartes about his sense experience, but he is also capable of deceiving Descartes about objects of mathematics, about mathematical certainty. And so with this idea of the evil genius, Descartes also eliminates conclusions based on mathematical reasoning. He cannot trust his sense experience. He cannot even trust the reasoning of his mind to reach mathematical conclusions. And so the task is laborious. He feels as if he is a captive who is sleeping, who dreads to wake up to see the reality that is in front of him. Descartes continues his meditation. He is still looking for that certain piece of knowledge that he can build all of learning and all the sciences on. As he is meditating and thinking about these matters, Descartes notices that he is being deceived, and it is leading him to doubt things. He also notices that if he is doubting things, doesn't he have to exist? Of course he does. This is the foundational piece of certainty that Descartes is looking for. Descartes, because he is being deceived and because he doubts, he must exist. This is stated another way with the Latin words cogito ergo sum, which means I think, therefore I am. Because Descartes is thinking, he concludes that he must exist. Notice where the certainty is coming from. It is coming from Descartes' mind. It is coming from him thinking about the thing. This is called the turn to the subject. And to be understood fully, it has to be contrasted with the philosophy of Aristotle. Aristotle said that knowledge begins with sense experience. Aristotle did not doubt his sense experience. Descartes does doubt his sense experience. So Descartes is not going to use the sense experience of the objects in the physical world in order to have some sort of certainty. Descartes is providing that certainty with his mind by thinking about himself. This is called the turn to the subject because Descartes is the subject. The certainty of knowing something is not the physical objects out there. It is not the objective truth, the objective objects that you see in the world. It is the subject. It is what you are thinking. So what you are thinking is the path to truth. This is what Descartes is laying down here. This is one of the reasons why he's called the first modern philosopher, because he is placing the emphasis of knowing the truth on the individual subject and their mind. It cannot be stated enough how important this passage is and how important this turn is that Descartes is presenting. Descartes was a faithful Catholic, and the main philosopher for Catholics at the time of Descartes and the main popular philosophy during his time was that of St. Thomas Aquinas and Aristotle. And both of those philosophers state that knowledge begins with sense experience. The philosophy of Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas was and still is the basis for the doctrine of the Catholic Church. For example, the most important way to worship God for Catholics is to go to Holy Mass. And in Holy Mass, you are receiving the body of Jesus Christ, the actual body of Jesus Christ in the Holy Eucharist. This is Catholic doctrine. The theology of this doctrine is explained by St. Thomas Aquinas using the philosophy of Aristotle. This is called transubstantiation. The word transubstantiation has the word substance in it. When Thomas Aquinas is using the word substance, he is using it in the way that Aristotle used it. And there's much more examples like this. So when Descartes is showing this cogito ergo sum, this new way of knowing things, this new way of finding truth, he is countering the old way. After Descartes finds that certain piece of knowledge by which to develop and build the sciences, he seeks further to understand what he is. Because with the hyperbolic doubt, he doesn't know what he is. All he knows is that he exists. He doesn't know that he has hands, arms, or anything else. He just knows that he's thinking. This is the conclusion that he reaches. This is the definition that he gives for a human being at this point. He is a thing which thinks. This is in contrast to what Aristotle said a human being is. Aristotle said a human being was a rational animal. Descartes doesn't want to get into that because he can't get into it. If he said a human being is a rational animal, he's got to explain what rationality is. He's got to explain what an animal is. He's not going to do that because he doesn't trust his sense experience. How would he do it? With this point, there's one other thing that needs to be taken into account here. We have not seen Descartes refute any previous arguments. We have not seen him refute any arguments from Aristotle, any arguments from St. Thomas Aquinas, or any arguments from any of the other ancients. He is merely dismissing them and throwing them aside. This also is his contribution to modern philosophy. This is a common practice with modern philosophers where they will just dismiss the arguments from the ancients and just start anew. This is in stark contrast to Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas. If you go and read Aristotle, if you go and read St. Thomas Aquinas, you will see the care and the thoughtfulness that they take into refuting and using the arguments of their predecessors. For Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas, this is how you gain knowledge. You gain knowledge by building upon the knowledge that was previous. Yes, this means sometimes you have to refute things that were said before, but this is how knowledge is gained and is built upon, just like it happens in physics, just like it happens in mathematics. Descartes continues his meditation as he notices a piece of wax. In looking at this piece of wax, he notices that it has a certain color, it has a certain smell, it has a certain shape. But as this piece of wax is put closer to the fire, the wax changes. It no longer has the shape that it had. It no longer has the color that it had. So how can Descartes say that this is the same piece of wax? It has changed its external appearance. What Descartes notices is that it's not the senses that allows a human being to say that it's the same piece of wax. The five senses, seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, those come up short because the wax has changed. It does not look the same. It does not feel the same. It doesn't even smell the same. What allows us to say that it is the same piece of wax is our mind. We know it's the same piece of wax because our mind understands the change that has happened, because our mind understands that the wax remains. Even though it has changed shape, it is still the same piece of wax. Our sense experience came up short. Our sense experience does not reveal that this is the same piece of wax. The idea of the wax in our mind allows us to understand that this is the same piece of wax. So there is a stark difference between our body, which has the senses, and our mind. This right here is an indication of the dualism of Descartes. Dualism is the idea that there are two distinct realities, one immaterial mind and the other a physical body. There are different types of dualism. The dualism of Descartes is one where the mind is in contrast to the body. The mind is the vehicle by which human beings know, and the body is the thing that is less known and is not the vehicle towards real knowledge. Descartes is going to continue in the meditations to try and retrieve the idea that he can know things. Because remember, the goal of Descartes in the meditations is to find certainty in order to establish a basis by which learning can take place and a firm foundation for the sciences. Descartes is a scientist, Descartes is a mathematician, and Descartes is also a faithful Catholic. And he wants to be able to say that he can know things for certain about those things, about his religion, about mathematics, about science. So Descartes next is going to give a proof for the existence of God. If you remember, Descartes introduced the evil genius. The evil genius had the purpose of throwing doubt on mathematical knowledge. And so Descartes gives a proof for the existence of God. Because if God exists and God is good, then God would not allow this evil genius to deceive Descartes. And in this way, Descartes has now retrieved the mathematical certainty. And so all those sciences and those avenues of knowing based on mathematics, Descartes has gotten back. But Descartes still needs to get back sense knowledge. He still needs to get back the external world. Nobody's going to buy Descartes' philosophy if he's going to say bluntly, hey, you can't know that thing that's right in front of your face. You can't know your mom. You can't know your dad. You can't know that's a pizza in your hand. Nobody is going to buy that philosophy if that's going to be the conclusion. And so Descartes gives an argument, he gives a proof for the existence of the external world. So with this proof, Descartes retrieves the idea that he can know physical objects in the world. Notice that Descartes has to give a proof for this. For Aristotle, there would be no proof necessary because the idea that the coffee mug is in front of your face and you know it, that is self-evident. In fact, it's immediately self-evident. It doesn't require any proof. But for Descartes, these objects of the external world, knowledge of them anyways, requires proof. What's going to happen after Descartes is that the philosophers that come after Descartes, they're not going to accept Descartes' argument for the existence of God. And the problem with that is Descartes' proof of the existence of the external world, of physical objects in other words, is dependent on Descartes' proof of the existence of God. And so when these later philosophers deny and reject Descartes' proof for the existence of God, they're also rejecting his proof for the existence of the external world. But the thing that the later modern philosophers are going to keep is Descartes' hyperbolic doubt, because that's what they'll be left with. And this philosophy, this hyperbolic doubt, this extreme skepticism is still with us today. It is still the primary starting point that you will find in academics.